Beautiful. All right. That brings us to the third element of this system, the knowledge flow. And this actually used to be 3 separate databases, but we've put them together into one because it makes more sense. And I'll explain a little more about that in a little bit. The knowledge flow is basically every piece of information, every piece of knowledge that we might need that is not an action, right? So anything that comes in that's an action obviously goes in the action tracker, but any other documents, ideas, things we want to write down, minutes to a meeting, all that stuff goes into the knowledge flow. This element is connected to the action tracker in the way that we can embed our action tracker in our meeting notes template. So whenever we had a meeting, we can immediately add actions to the action tracker. It's also added to the daily review, as we just discussed, because we want to empty our knowledge inboxes every single day. It is related to the project tracker because just like actions are always contextual to a project, so is knowledge. So knowledge is always related to a project. And this is one of the places where I sort of made a change. I used to also have a knowledge classification database, which is basically a way of labeling specific knowledge, but I don't think that makes a lot of sense. I didn't really use it a lot. And I also think that large language models will make that sort of less contextual filtering much easier, so I don't really think that makes a lot of sense. Then we have our weekly and our monthly review, and during these reviews we rate our knowledge, and I'm going to show you what I mean by that. But basically we assign a certain importance, a certain value to all of our knowledge pieces, so that over time we can sort of see our most valuable knowledge pieces all collected into one place. So during the weekly and monthly review, we're sort of rating those knowledge pieces. And then during the yearly review, we check in with those most valuable knowledge pieces that we have created in the past year. The knowledge database lives here in the bottom. The reason it is over here is because knowledge is always created or collected in the here and now. So, right, we execute on something in our action tracker, and as we do that, we very often generate knowledge, or we find knowledge. So sort of in this space is where the knowledge is collected. But then over time, we sort of check in with our knowledge pieces. So during the daily review, we empty our inbox, we process our knowledge. But then during the weekly review, we actually engage with any open knowledge pieces and potentially also give them a higher rating. And similarly for the monthly review, we also go one level higher. So we keep engaging with this knowledge that has been created down here in the bottom as we are progressing throughout the different review cycles. That will hopefully become more clear in a little bit. The key goal of the knowledge flow is to capture knowledge. This can either be internally generated or externally generated. Then we want to improve this knowledge. We want to improve the quality of this knowledge so that we can then utilize it. We take this knowledge to create value. And it's very important for knowledge to be in a flow because it's very easy to over capture. And we're going to have a little look at how much information is out in the world, but it's very easy to just over capture and get everything into a system. And initially you might think like, oh, I have a system, I can collect all this information, but if it's not actionable, it's better if it would just be deleted or archived. So we have actually automated that process to really keep knowledge actionable and make sure we don't drown in unnecessary knowledge pieces. So we capture, then we improve, we utilize, and we then create value. Because if we don't create value with it, it's not valuable knowledge. It's not worth having. So to that point, let's take a few steps back and sort of look at knowledge from first principles. We could imagine this world, our reality, to sort of be like a Minecraft world. There's just building blocks everywhere. Similar to a Notion page, our world is just consisting of building blocks. But the blocks that we engage with are much smaller, right? We have our quarks and our protons, and then we have our atoms, and we have our biological structures, and all this complexity of physics and biology. But if we really boil it down to the essence, they are just building blocks all flying around. Knowledge is basically the ability to put these blocks together in a way that they have a certain function. So when we apply knowledge, we can, for example, take these random building blocks that we have over here, and we actually put them together to create a shape. Now, just creating a random shape like this doesn't necessarily add value. So we want to use it in a way that makes sense. We want to use it to solve a challenge. And this is the purpose of knowledge, right? We apply it to the world to influence it in a way and to get the outcome that we want. Okay, we're going to explore a little bit deeper the role of knowledge and action in the project tracker section of this masterclass, but this is the basic functionality, the basic reason why we want to both gather our knowledge but also improve our knowledge. One little last note on that: knowledge is usually something we have as information, but when we apply knowledge, then it's when it becomes skills, right? And we want to have a combination of knowledge and skills. So that's just a little distinction to make there. Okay, this graph over here shows sort of the state of the world that we are currently living in. So on this left axis, we have the information quality. And then on the y-axis, we have the information quantity. As the quantity of information increases, so does the variance in quality. And what I mean by that is that as we are having access to more and more information, the best possible information is more valuable than ever before, but the worst possible information is also shittier than ever before. So, in other words, we live in a world of information abundance, right? This skill over here is a logarithmic skill. What that means, it's not just linearly, but this is exponential, right? Information is growing at a rapid speed. And we looked earlier at the world data generation chart, which basically showed that we have increased the amount of information generated worldwide by 100-fold in just a few decades. So the information quantity is increasing a lot. And that also means that this quality, this variance in the quality is also growing a lot. So there's better, more valuable gems available than ever before, but there's also a lot of shittier information than ever before. And the cruel reality about this is that many people will have difficulty getting along in today's day and age. So they might not be following the line like this, but they might be following the line going down like this. And this is the reality. A lot of people are stuck in bullshit, algorithms being served information that is just blatantly false, is untrue. It's causing a lot of disruption in society. It is taking away a lot of value, but it is the reality. And it's only going to be a smaller amount of people that are able to sort of take from this high quantity of information and find the gems that are in there. Now, if you are watching this masterclass right now, you are very likely in this group over here, right? You are very likely someone who's going to be reaping the benefits of these rewards. And because this is an exponential system, because the data is growing exponentially, those rewards are also going to return exponentially. So I think, and this is my personal philosophy, is that most of us will also have a moral obligation to sort of create that value and then share it with other people. Because frankly, many people are just going to be stuck in sort of this part of the system. Okay, so that being said, our goal is then to separate the signal from the noise, right? We want to scour this whole data, right? We want to scour all that stuff and we want to find those gems and disregard all of that shit. That is sort of the main goal that we have. A last note, I briefly mentioned this a few minutes ago. There are sort of two types of knowledge. One type of knowledge is the externally generated knowledge. And this is all of the knowledge that the outside world, people outside of ourselves, have generated. On the other side, we have the internal knowledge, which is all of the knowledge that we ourselves have generated. Now, the thing between these two is that the external knowledge, that is the thing that really scales. So if we look at that graph from the previous sheet, we can see this variance, this very high quantities being generated. And that's because we're with 8 billion people. And many of those people nowadays have access to the internet, have access to tools for generating new knowledge. So that part of the equation really scales exponentially. This part of the equation scales linearly. Our personal knowledge does not scale exponentially. This hasn't really changed in the past 100 or 500 or 10,000 years. We still have the same ability to generate knowledge ourselves, but we can use this external knowledge to improve our internal knowledge, right? So from this very large ocean of information, we can get the things that are useful, and we can use that to sort of improve our self-generated and internal knowledge. And similarly, the internal knowledge that we have embodied also gives us a filter, gives us a perspective to look at all this stuff with. So it is a cycle. They do inform each other. Our external knowledge improves our internal knowledge. And then by having better internal knowledge, we can also become better at finding the gems in all of this external knowledge. But it's an important distinction to make. A lot of it is generated by other people. Some of it is generated by ourselves. And this stuff we want to spend a lot of time on because that's where the real value is created. That's where we really understand knowledge. And that's when we can also start applying it to create value. Okay. That means now it is time to do the thing that we all came here for, which is Notion promotion, baby. Okay, let's start by creating a knowledge database. Now, let me just open up this database over here. We're actually going to go and say, okay, this is part of a new section, namely the knowledge databases. And then over here, once again, we're going to create a database table view. And actually, I accidentally created an inline version. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to turn this into a page. I'm going to open this all the way up. And we're going to call this one the knowledge database. The icon for the knowledge database is the thread icon. And of course, we are also going to add a cover. Will my Mac search do it for a change? External knowledge. Do we just have regular knowledge? Knowledge. I'm just going to give it this one. Okay. There we go. Knowledge database cover. Quick little aside, as you can see over here, we can also add descriptions to pages. We can add descriptions to properties. We're not going to add any descriptions during this masterclass because I'm explaining everything out loud. But if you purchase the Notion of Life template, and if you want to use the system straight away, then the whole system will also have descriptions explaining what the purpose of each separate element is. So just handy to know. And you can also, of course, use this to create your own descriptions. So for example, instead of calling this like the master table XXL with all info, which we would never do, but if you would do that, instead, you could say, hey, I'm just going to call this the master table. I'm going to remove XXL with all info, add it over there. And then when I hover, I can see XXL with all info, right? So we can add some descriptions to our databases, pages, properties, etc. Okay. Let's get into the knowledge database. This one's going to be slightly more complex, but that's the whole purpose of a masterclass, right? We're building it up one block at a time. Feel free to pause and look at things for an extra minute. The first thing that we want to do is we want to create this one and say content name. So this is going to be the title of the knowledge or information piece that we add to this database. I'm just going to add some filler pages. Bloop, bloop, bloop. Then the next thing that we want to do is we want to create a type. And this type is going to signal to us what sort of knowledge piece is this. And these can be three different knowledge pieces. It can either be a creation, it can be a learning, or it can be a meeting. A creation is any piece of knowledge that we create from scratch, right? So it's this part. It's like purely self-generated knowledge. That is a creation. The second option, a learning, is an external piece of knowledge, but on top of that piece of knowledge, we are actually riffing. So we're maybe taking something from that knowledge or we're iterating on it. So we take an external piece of knowledge, but we make it useful. And then the third option is a meeting, which is basically just a place to take meeting notes. Because we do have meetings as humans and it's nice to have a place to take meeting notes. So that's the third option. So I'm going to add them over here. I'm going to say creation. I'm going to say meeting. I'm going to say learning. I'm actually going to turn all of them gray. And then this one, we're going to give the light bulb icon. This one will give the speech bubble icon. And learning, this is my favorite emoji out there. We're going to use a little nerd emoji. Okay, so that is the type. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a rating. So like I mentioned before, knowledge needs to be actionable. It's very easy for knowledge to overwhelm us. Like there's so much in the world to capture. So we sort of want to get to those gems in those mountain of data, mountain of information that is out there. So we're going to give ratings to our knowledge pieces. The first part of those ratings we are doing during the daily review. And those ratings are the 1 to 3 stars. So I'm just going to add this over here. I'm going to say 1 star. I'm going to say 2 star. we're going to say 3-star, and I'm actually going to color code those because 1 is the worst, 2 is medium, and then 3 stars is actually a good rating. These ratings right here, we are only allowed to give during the daily review. Or, I mean, it's more the opposite. The extra ratings that we're going to add right now, those we are not allowed to do during the daily review. So during our daily review, we only give it 1, 2, or 3 stars. Okay, so this is going to be the rating for the initial phase. Then, as a sort of visual separator, I'm just going to add this one over here. And I'm going to not actually able to duplicate that. Okay, that might be a nice feature to add. Wink, wink to the Notion team. I'm going to say monthly review, light gray. Okay, that will be 1 to 3 stars. Then the second sort of layer of rating I'm going to add is the diamonds. And later on, it will become clear why we're doing it this way. But we're going to add 1 diamond, we're going to add 2 diamonds, and we're going to add 3 diamonds. I'm going to color code these once again. This one goes here, and that one goes there. This one's going to be blue. It's also going to be blue, and that one is going to be purple. So, in a nutshell, during our daily review, we give each knowledge piece, when we empty our inboxes, a rating from 1 to 3 stars. Then, during our weekly review, we have the possibility to upgrade this knowledge to 1 or 2 diamonds. Now, we don't have to do this, but we can if we want to. And then during our monthly review, we have the opportunity to upgrade a knowledge piece to 3 diamonds. And by doing this, we sort of get a clear overview of which knowledge pieces were very important for us that year. But that is not the only reason we're doing it, because we're also adding a formula, and it's just a little sneak peek, which is going to be, I'm going to save this for now, the score. Basically, every knowledge piece is going to get a score based on the rating we gave to it and the amount of knowledge techniques that we apply to it. So later on, we're going to add a bunch of knowledge techniques to our templates, which help us interact with knowledge using best practices from all sorts of fields to sort of deepen, let me see if I can find it, to sort of improve our knowledge. So we have a structure in place that we can use to improve our knowledge. And as we are applying that, this rating score will go up. Now, why is this important? Because we have another formula. And this one over here, we're going to call days left. And we're going to give this icon. This is going to calculate how many days we have left to work on a knowledge piece. So like I said before, every knowledge piece is actionable. Everything is always moving. So we're going to calculate how many days we want to focus on a knowledge piece before it automatically gets archived. And the amount of days is based on how high it's rated. So whenever we give a higher rating to a knowledge piece, because it's important to us, that's why we give it a higher rating, then we automatically lengthen the time that we want to be able to work on it. So there's 2 properties that I need to add for this one to work. One is the created time, and we're just going to call that created. And then one is going to be a checkbox, which we will call exempt. And then we're going to paste this formula in here. Boom. So just like that, you can see this one has a rating of 3 diamonds, a score of 30, and that is why it has 90 days left, meaning we have 90 days to work on it. And if we were to, for example, change it to 3 stars, we would have 30 days to work on it. 2 stars, 75 days. So by changing the rating, we give ourselves more time to work on it. Okay. Next, what we want to have is the source from which we got the information. So we drag this one over here. The source is basically the type of medium from which we got the information. Is it an article? Is it a podcast? Is it a book? Is it a movie? Is it our own mind? There's different sources that we can get information from. So over here, I'm just going to write all of these down. and lastly, the social media post. Okay, so later on, during our daily review, we're also going to assign it a source, so we can easily see from which source we gathered it. Okay, so now we have the content name, we have the type, we have the source, we have the rating, and then we want to have the status. Now, previously, I had a manual status here, meaning we would just have a status property like this one, and we could simply say, hey, this knowledge piece is not started, or I'm currently working on it, or it is completed. But what I noticed doing this is that, like I mentioned earlier, the knowledge started overflowing very soon. And it took a lot of time and effort. It actually took more time and effort to sort of clean out the database than actually engage with the knowledge. So instead, what I've done is I've created another formula. And yeah, during this system, you'll see many formulas. Formulas are a really powerful way of manipulating data from a database. This is also one of the reasons we do database first design. Now I'm just going to show you why they exist and what they do. And then later we will look at how they work. But for now, that is too complicated. So we're just going to call this one the status. And whenever we have a formula property, we actually allow ourselves to change the icon here. So just to make a little more clarification, give this one a checklist. I'm going to paste this formula in here. And now you can see a status is automatically assigned. Basically what this formula does is it checks whether there are still days left on this knowledge piece. So as long as there's still day left, it's on keep exploring. But it's only showing us keep exploring for the information that already has a rating. Because the moment we give a rating to a knowledge piece, it implies we're already interacting with it. But it might also be that we have captured an article or captured a podcast or something else, and we haven't interacted with it yet. If it's not been interacted with yet, it's on to explore. So over here you can see to explore, and it has no rating yet, but the moment I would apply a rating, boom, it's going to be keep exploring. Now we have one special rating. The moment we give 1 star to a knowledge piece, that is basically our way of auto-completing it. So let's say, for example, you captured something during the day, which you do want to keep in your system, but you don't want to engage with it any further, then we can give it a 1-star rating. So you have 1 star, it's completed, 2 stars or 3 stars, it's keep exploring, no rating, it is to explore. Okay, so that is our status. And then we also have one more, which is called archive, which basically happens if we never interact with this. So you capture something and you don't interact with it for 30 days, it's automatically archived. So this way, all the knowledge keeps flowing. You don't have to think about it. You only see relevant knowledge. And I think that is a major improvement for how we interact with these knowledge pieces. Okay. Then we have a few more practical properties. And as you might already see, the knowledge database is definitely a database that's heavier on the property sides, right? So we always have these sort of interplay between the templates, which are more the review cycles, and then we have these functional database, like the knowledge database and the action tracker, which has a lot of properties in the database itself. And it takes a little more time to wrap our head around that, but that's a good sort of side note to make. Okay. We're going to add a URL so that we can automatically link to any knowledge piece. And then we have the created date, and I also want the last edited. Okay. The goal here is to improve the quality of our knowledge. And the way we can do this is by applying different techniques. Now, I will first show you this in the existing database because it's quite a lot of work to add this manually. But we basically have all these different types of techniques that we can apply. Things like mind mapping, things like summarizing, a technique like critical thinking or the Feynman technique. These are all knowledge and information techniques that people use for all sorts of things. These are generally available on the internet. And what we want to do is when we create a knowledge piece, we actually want to give ourselves the possibility to apply these different knowledge techniques. So let me actually show you how that might work. If I were to create a new entry over here, I'm going to say, this is a knowledge piece. I'm going to call this a creative notes template. Then at the top of this page, you can see knowledge development techniques. And this is a little toggle. And from this menu, you can choose one of the techniques that you might want to use for this knowledge piece. So let's say, for example, I am doing some presentation on charisma and confidence. And actually, I want to mind map about this presentation. I can then click this button. This button will then generate a mind mapping template for me. I can turn this one into text. And then over here, I have a little plan for how I can do this. So I want to identify the central theme. I want to create main branches. Basically, it's just a little plan for how to do a mind mapping well. And then in the bottom, it also shows how long it will probably take and the difficulty of this technique. Now, what also happens is that inside of this knowledge piece, if I would open this one up and we go to the technique property, mind mapping has been added here. So whenever we apply one of these techniques, whenever we press one of these buttons, this technique is added to this particular knowledge piece. And basically what this means is that as we are adding more techniques, we can keep track of those techniques, and they will then also improve the rating score of our knowledge piece. So let's say, for example, if I were to, let me actually open this, right? If I were to add all these different exercises, right, by just applying them to this knowledge piece, the knowledge score is also going to go up. So the combination of our subjective rating and the amount of techniques that we actually apply to a knowledge piece together inform the rating score. Okay, so let's create a multi-select here. And we're going to call this techniques. And I'm actually going to add mind mapping, the Feynman technique, metaphorical thinking, and case studies. Let's just take these as examples. Okay, so we're going to add these techniques over here. I'm going to make all of them light gray. And then, as you can see now, when we add a technique, so you can see this now has a score of 6. And if we were then also to add a 3-star rating, for example, it has a score of 21. And then once again, the combination of these two, the higher the score, the longer we work on a knowledge piece. So the more time we invest in it, the more time we also give ourselves to work on a specific knowledge piece. Hey there. Just a brief intermission to let you know that you can get free access to the masterclass worksheet by dropping your email address in the link down below. And inside of this worksheet, you will find a step-by-step outline to track your progress as you're going throughout this masterclass. You will also find the complete slide deck that we are using in this video. You will find all of the formulas ready to copy and paste, meaning you don't have to write them out all yourself, but you can just plug them into your system and start using them straight away. And this one is a really good one. You will find the 2 original reflection databases, and this will literally save you hours of setup time. You can just plug them into your system and start using them straight away. And then just as a tiny little cherry on top, you will also get all of the database and template covers that we are using in this masterclass. So if you want to grab all this stuff for free right now, then drop your email address down below and I'll send it to you straight away. Okay. Let's start building some templates. And the first one we're going to start with is the creative notes template. We're going to have 3 templates, one for each of these 3 types that we created earlier. So we're going to put this one on creation. And actually, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to customize this layout a little bit because we don't need all of this information here. The only thing I want here is from the source. I want to say, give me this source, give me the amount of days left to work on this, and give me the rating score. I can apply this to the pages. And one last thing that we can do with this rating score, currently it is just a number, right? Currently it's just a number. Actually, what we want to do is we're going to add this property and we're going to turn it into a bar. And we'll just make the rating score, let's say like 90, for example. And I'm going to turn that orange. And then we have a little visual indication of how high the score of this knowledge piece is, right? We have a little bar over here. Okay. Now what we want to do is we want to create buttons. And whenever we click that button, I want this template for this knowledge technique to be generated on this page. And then I also automatically want to change the property inside of this database entry. Okay, how are we going to do that? First things first, we're going to say /button. Boom. Buttons are very cool. They're basically ways to make little mini automations that you can trigger with a single click, as it sort of suggests, right? A button. So for this button, what we want to do is we're going to call this one actually mind mapping. And we're going to give it a little icon. Let's say, for example, this. So the logic of a button is basically when button is clicked, I want this to happen. Okay, so what is it that we want to happen? I want to generate a new page. So I'm going to say insert block below this button, and inside this block, I'm going to create a page. And this one, I'm going to call the mind mapping technique. And then I'm actually going to grab this technique from the pre-existing space. And then over here, you can see, okay, now I've created a page inside of this button, right? I've created a template inside of this button, which basically has this mind mapping action plan. And then I'm going to go to the previous page. And now if we click this button, boom, just like that, this page is generated. Now, you might be wondering to yourself, why put this stuff on a separate page and not put it inside of this button? The main reason for this is that when we apply techniques, it might be that we've already put a lot of content on the page. So then it's easier to just sort of drag this page to the position where we want it to go. Right, maybe we want to have it right over there. And then we can just simply turn it into text and collapse it like this. Okay, so like that, we want to have buttons for these different techniques. The moment we press one of those buttons, we want it to generate. But there's another thing that we want to do. Because we don't just only want it to generate the structure, we also wanted to change this property over here to add the one that we just generated. So inside this button, what I'm going to say is add an action. And I actually want to edit a page inside this page. So basically, this is a dynamic filter that says check on the page that I'm currently on. At the moment, it's a template, but when we generate that template, it's automatically going to change into the page we just generated. And I want to say on this page, I want to add to these techniques the mind mapping one. Done. And now whenever we click this button, boom, it's automatically added. The rating score is automatically updated. We can turn it into text, and we can apply it to this specific knowledge piece. And like that, we do the same for all of these different techniques that we have. And you can grab all of these techniques. I put the template in the description down below. If you leave your email address, I'll send you a doc with all the information in it. And yeah, we're not going to do all of these manually hand by hand by now, because that's going to be too much work. But basically, what this will look like is we're going to have our knowledge development techniques. Put the brain here. And then I'll just copy paste this in for now. Put this next to, okay, little side tangent. What I was just trying to do here, I was basically trying to drag this one to the right because I wanted to create two columns, but I'm not able to do that. And the reason I'm not able to do that is because we're working inside of a toggle. If I were to drag this one out of this toggle, and then I would grab this one, I would be able to pull them next to each other. But inside of Notion, when you're working inside other blocks, for example, inside a toggle, or for example, inside a callout, it is usually not possible to add things next to each other. But there is a workaround for this. And the way to do that is to create a page inside of the place where you want to make the thing. Then basically take all these elements and drag them into this page. Then when we can create the desired structure inside of this page. Then we can go back and then we collapse it into text right over here. And then just like that, we have actually created these 2 columns. It's a workaround. I don't know why Notion hasn't fixed it yet. It's been like this for many, many years. But anyway, just like this, we now have all of our knowledge development techniques. We add a little line below. And there you go. This would now be our creative notes template. Okay, I'm just going to add the creative note icon over here, which is the light bulb. Yes. Okay, and then we're actually going to add this cover over here, which should then be in Notion of Life covers, knowledge covers, creative notes. Boom. Okay, that is our creative notes templates. This is everything that is generated internally. And then we're going to do the same, basically duplicate this one for our learning notes template, right? So this one follows the same structure, but now we can also capture knowledge from the outside world and then sort of iterate on that knowledge. But we're using the same knowledge development techniques and sort of the same layout. I'm actually going to remove this, add cover. I'm just going to call this one learning notes template. Now, later on in this masterclass, I'm actually going to show you how to easily save information to an external learning notes template. Because what we can do inside Notion, or actually outside of Notion, is, let me just open up a quick tab over here. There's actually extensions that allow us to easily save any page that we're browsing on the internet. So let's say, for example, I would go to a Notion of Life and I would grab this article. And I'm reading this article and I'm thinking to myself, okay, interesting stuff. I actually want to take some notes about this. I can then go over here. I have this extension and I can say save to Notion straight into my knowledge database. And the moment I add it to this knowledge database, I can choose for it to either create an empty page with just a link, but I can also choose for it to put the entire web page in there. And what that will do is if I save this page and I open this in Notion, and this is in my personal working space, you see that it actually takes this entire web page and puts it straight into our knowledge database. So this is something that we can do with an external plugin, and I'm going to show you later how that works. But just for now, that is good to know, because then we have here all this external information, and then based on this, we can start editing. We can make notes, add some notes. We can apply the different techniques that we just added, and like that, we can interact with the external knowledge that we have captured. Okay, the third and last template that we're going to add is a little bit different, and this is the meeting notes template, because very often we will have meetings. Now, my general rule of thumb is less meetings is more better, but sometimes we do want to have meetings. So when we have meetings, we want them to be structured, we want them to have a goal, and we want to keep the information, sort of capture the information that we've generated during the meeting. So I'm just going to go in here, I'm going to say new template, meeting notes template, and then here we're going to say meeting agenda. And actually, we're going to turn this into H2. Summary and key takeaways. And then next up, actions. And actually, I want to style these a little bit. So I'm just going to say Command E, make it blue. Command E, Command Shift H, make it blue. Command E, Command Shift H, make it blue. And then over here, we're going to say agenda topic. We're going to say key takeaway. And then lastly, what we want to do here is we want to create an inbox to add new action items related to this specific meeting. Because as we're having a meeting and we have these key takeaways, maybe someone goes, Fran will send over the documents to Juliet, right? Maybe that's one of the things that we discussed during this meeting. So what we want to do then is take this knowledge piece and instantly turn it into an action item. Okay, so now simply I'm going to create a linked view of our action tracker. We're going to grab this action inbox. I'm just going to hide this one. And then what this allows us to do is whenever we had a meeting, we can simply drag this right in there, just like a block, and it's automatically added to our action inbox. So this is going to be the meeting notes template. I'm just going to call this key takeaway. We're going to add the memo, add the cover, upload. I'm going to go into personal knowledge covers, meeting, boom. Earlier I saw this one. We actually forgot to change to the nerd. Okay, and just like that, we've created our knowledge database and we have templates. We have templates for meetings, for learnings, and for creative notes. Okay, so what we want to do now is create an inbox in which we can capture our knowledge pieces. So over here, I'm just going to say empty view. I'm going to call this one the knowledge inbox. Give it the corresponding icon. And then we're just going to hide all of these properties and only get the properties that we need. So what we want is we want to have the content name. Then we want to have the source from which this knowledge piece came. We want to have a rating. We want to have the knowledge type. And then ultimately, we want to assign it to a project. Now, we have not yet linked the knowledge database to a project database. So for now, just like with the action tracker, I'm just going to create temporary placeholder. Let's just call this Write the Notion of Life book. Okay. And then we want to apply a filter. And basically we want to say, I only want to see knowledge items that have not yet been linked to a project. So project is empty. So the moment I assign a project to it, it will disappear from my inbox, similar to with the action items. This is also the reason why we put it as the last one over here, because then whenever something has come into our inbox, right? So maybe during the day I captured reflections from Nietzsche. Maybe that's a little note that I wrote. And I opened one of these templates for it. Maybe it was like a learning note. Then at the end of the day, I can say, okay, the source was an article. The importance I give to this is 2 stars. I want to revisit it later, but it was not that interesting. The type, it is a learning actually, because we have not changed this in the templates, because this is supposed to be learning. And this over here is supposed to be meeting. It's a learning. And then the moment I assign it to my project, it disappears from the inbox. So I'm going to empty these ones. Very simple knowledge inbox. And then of course we're going to add this to our daily review, right? Because we empty this at the end of every daily review. I'm just going to open up and delete this placeholder. And now the cool thing, this is really an amazing feature about Notion. What we can do is we can actually add database views inside one sort of database container. So this over here would be a database container. I can add a new view over here, but this view can pull from other databases. So over here, I'm actually going to go to the knowledge database. I'm going to grab the knowledge inbox. I'm going to hide this one. And then as part of our shutdown routine, we can simply first look at our action inbox, and then we can look at our knowledge inbox. And we can give it the right source, we can give it the right rating, we can give it the right type, we can assign it to a project, and boom, the inbox is empty. And